Let's play a game where I try to remember everything I read this month. Go! My letter board that I usually have over here is currently set up for the first book that I finished for school that I'm going to do a review of, and I didn't feel like taking the letters off and putting like August wrap up there. So we're just going to go with this, and also you get to see my little birds that I have over here. My little birds, you never get to see those. I'm going to try really hard to remember all of the different things I read this month. It feels like it's been a lot longer than it is. I know one of the first things I finished was the book that's up here in the corner, Elizabeth Acevedo's With the Fire on High, and it was amazing. I don't read a lot of YA contemporary just because, I don't know, it's not that I don't like really well done tropes and I'm like a sucker for those, but it's just there's never any kind of like drama for me. Like I feel like sometimes within like other genres you have these interesting plot points and things that keep me, you know, in the book, whereas in YA I'm like, I can read about people going to school all the time, like this isn't fun anymore. But that one was really, really good. I'm not going to talk about it. It's really like hyped, and it's definitely deserves the hype, but there's other people who have done much better jobs of reviewing it than I do. But I highly suggest you get it and read it. I read Daughter of the Pirate King, Sea Witch, Scorpio Races, The Little Mermaid. I think that's it for the August Owl Crate box. And more in-depth reviews of those are in my unboxing video. So I'm not going to go into detail on those. You know, I liked some and didn't like others. The next thing I read was for the smutly, that's hard to say, but you know, the smut thing, and we read A Lesson in Thorns, and I read it on ebook, and it was, I mean, it was smutty. Sex happened. That's about all that happened. Character development, who? That's not fair. I really did enjoy the book. Sometimes you just want to read like absolute ridiculousness, and that's kind of what that book ended up being for me. I don't know if I'll read the sequel. I don't know if I'll read the third and fourth book whenever she puts those out. But you know what? Actually, I'm kind of a completionist, and I bet they don't cost much. I bet I'll finish them. I had to go back and look at my Goodreads. I actually finished one more than I thought I did. I finished, even though I didn't start it in August, but I did finish it finally, the book that I use when I'm running. I pick a different book kind of every like month or so, however long it takes me to finish it, and I just read on my Kindle while I'm doing my running. And this past month, July, before we did the reading rush where I changed it to A Curse So Dark and Lonely, I was reading Far From the Madding Crowd by Thomas Hardy. I don't have a physical copy of that. It was pretty good. You know, when you pick up classics, they can be kind of tough to get into, and this one definitely was. I remember the first 25% of it kind of dragging on. But once I actually got into the book and got to know the specific characters and kind of what was going on, it really was a nice little novel. I'd say it ends well, but I think it'd be a stretch. But I do recommend it, especially if you tend to like classics and it's just one you haven't gotten to. It would be really good. I'm not going to talk about any specific plot details. I may decide to do like a classics review kind of thing one day, because I do like catching up on classics, and it would be an excuse to read them. But it is good. As I'd say, if you enjoy classics, if you like, you know, Pride and Prejudice, if you like Dickens stuff, it's like a precursor to that kind of thing. So it is, again, pretty dry in places, but when the wit is there, it's really good. The last thing I finished, and I actually finished it just 2 weeks ago, so right before the end of August, was the book I had to read for school, The House Behind the Cedars by Charles Chestnut. I'm going to do a whole in-depth review on that one. It is a really good book. I would absolutely call it a classic. I would highly recommend anybody reading Charles Chestnut. I think he's a very important author. He was African American from North Carolina, and he could have passed for white, and he chose not to. And so some of his novels deal with that kind of dual, you know, reality for people who could have passed. And that's what The House Behind the Cedars is about. It's about a brother and sister who have to make the choice whether or not to pass and what that means for their futures. It is kind of a tragic novel. It's very the romantic period of the time, with a little bit of influence from the realism movement that was kind of starting when he wrote this, right after, you know, the Civil War. And so it's very important, I think, historically, for us to read books like that. But again, I'm going to do a specific review on that one. That's what I've got my letterboard set up for right now. I'm just find time, because if I'm not reading for class, I'm writing for class. I just don't have a lot of time to film videos, which I knew was going to be the case. But I think I figured out a system that'll work, and I can at least try to do like one a week or do reviews for the books I'm reading for class. So that was just what I read for the month of August. It was 8 total books, which again isn't bad. I'll probably still be able to keep near that level simply by reading stuff for school. I'm reading like a book every 2 weeks for this one class and then writing papers on it. So your girl's reading. It's just not for fun anymore. I mean, it's fun. Any new book is fun. You never know when you're going to like a book. I like the one we're reading for Southern Lit right now. It's the Tim Gotro book, The Clearing. And I'm reading Beloved, which got added to my Women in Literature class, which I haven't read since high school. So I'm looking forward to rereading that and seeing if my opinions have changed on it. But anyway, that was my wrap up for August. I don't have a September TBR unless you go watch my school books TBR, because that's what I'll be reading.